Today, in the year 2020, these things have been outlawed for many years, and if you want to know why, stick around at the end of the video for some legal information and some of the horror stories involving this gizmo. A good place to start is to watch my video titled Hood Latch, and basically the concept is the same except the trunk latch works with an electric motor and the hood latch is just manual. But there's moving parts on both, and all the moving parts do the same thing on both latches. Often the problem with these latches is just basic common issues. And you just, whether it's electric or manual, it's always comes down to thinking about it and what's happening with the moving parts, almost like a childlike mind. You just have to reduce it down to, well, this does this and this goes here, and this is rubbing too hard against that, so it can't do this. And this is getting stuck, so it can't open all the way, and this piece can't close all the way, and that's because it has too much crud and dirt in it. And you just have to kind of step back, take your analytical mind and the mind of an adult and just think about it like a child would think about it. So it's clear the first thing you want to do is take a really, really good look at the latch and figure out what part is doing what and why it's doing that and why does it have to do that. So first thing we have to do is get this trunk panel out of the way, and we have to pop these buttons off. The ones in the corners screw off. I wish they made them all like that because they're easy to get off and on. But the other 6, and yeah, there's 8 of them on this Lincoln Town car just to hold that back panel on. They have to be pried off, and they're not as easy, and they often strip, and they're just made of cheap plastic. But worry not, I mean, they're dirt cheap at your local parts store, and you can get a bunch of them for like $2. When you close your trunk lid, the primary latch latches on to this piece right here. At the same time, another piece on that trunk latch collapses this switch here and pushes it down. That makes a connection in the switch and sends a signal through these wires right here down to the motor, makes the motor turn, and it pulls that part of the latch downward and closed, and it also brings the trunk lid with it because the trunk lid is latched onto this bracket. So while the primary latch is latched, this is not coming down or pulling the trunk lid with it. So why not? What could be wrong? Are we getting power to the switch? Is the switch broke? Sometimes it's going to be the case. Is the switch okay and it's sending power to the motor, but the motor is broke? That's almost never the case. These motors seem to last forever. Is something stuck in this bracket? That's a good question, and very often something is stuck with that bracket, and all the cause is dirt and grime refusing to let that close all the way or open all the way. So the first thing we're going to do is bypass this switch, and we're just going to run 2 wires back into the motor and just hot wire. This will determine if we're getting power to the motor and if the actual motor is working, which eliminates it down to a switch or something stuck on this. So there's only one flathead screw holding this switch down, and after that you're just going to have to kind of pull it up gently out of the connectors once you get that screw out of there. And pull it from the sides, not the ends. Just kind of wiggle it out of there until it comes out. There you go. Here's the connector that we just had to wiggle that switch out of, and here is the wire connectors, and between that and that we have that switch right there. So we're going to bypass that switch by going direct from this connector into that connector and seeing if it works. If it does work, we've kind of reduced it down to the switch because we know there's power going to the motor. We will know that the motor is working and the problem is with that switch. And we see this black wire, which is the ground, going into the left side of the connector and coming out of the left side. So we're going to go to the left prong on that connector and just run a straight wire through it. And then the middle wire is not really the middle, the one second to the end would go to the second to the end prong, and that black wire with the white stripe would go to the prong on the right. Huh. Well, that's interesting. Let's pause here and think about this for a minute. Did you see that? I'm going to show it to you again in case you didn't see it. Let's rewind that. So now we know we're getting power to the motor and the motor is working. So something's going wrong here. And the interesting part of this is that bracket should have been all the way open. The trunk was popped, and when it's popped, that comes all the way open. So something with that bracket is getting stuck and not allowing it to come all the way open. So it's safe to assume that if that bracket is not all the way open, then it's not opening something on the switch, and therefore the car thinks the trunk is already closed when you closed it, and that's why it's not closing. So let's take a look at how that switch coordinates with the bracket. If we take a good look at the switch, we see a tiny little lever on it. I opened it up, but it was stuck closed, and it was right about here. Therefore, when you close the trunk lid, this switch already thinks the trunk lid is closed, so it's not going to work. And what happens is that bracket, as it's closing, it brings this switch all the way down to here. And then when you release the trunk and you pop the trunk, the latch opens and this comes all the way back up to the position you see right now, right here. And then when you close it, it closes. This was not opening all the way up because the bracket on the latch was not opening all the way up. So let's take another view of this. With the switch reinstalled and the bracket all the way open, and now we can see that tiny little lever is all the way open, and it will work at least one time when we close this trunk. But will it work again? Will that bracket come all the way back up again? The answer is no, it won't. It will only work one time. So what we have to do is make sure that this bracket's going to come all the way down and all the way up every single time. And the cause of all this is it's all dried up and all the grease is gone, and all that's left is dirt. So we have to clean this whole latch out. Along with all the connectors, we're going to blow all the electronics off, and then when that's all done, we're going to lube it back up and see what we have. And when I pop this hood, listen carefully. There's a delay in that little lever on the switch popping open. Here, right there. Well, that tells you that the latch is opening all the way up, but that little lever is sticking a little bit, so we're going to lube that up too. These pull-down motors came in some of the Cadillacs, some of the Camaros, some of the Firebirds, some of the Lincolns, and some of the Oldsmobiles. You can still get the motors and the switches and everything, but they stopped putting them on cars after about a dozen kids locked themselves in the trunk of cars and wound up sadly dying. In fact, to this day, when a child is reported missing, one of the first things the investigators do is find out what kind of cars people have, and they go around checking the neighborhood for those kind of vehicles. They're also notorious for breaking fingers, and yeah, some people for some reason like to put their fingers in there, and the next thing you know, yeah, pretty nasty. So be advised, and it's almost never any fun to put your fingers in these while they're closing, okay? I appreciate you guys, and I hope I helped you out. These latches and motors and switches are not cheap when you start adding them all up, and you're looking at about 150 bucks altogether, when it's absolutely not necessary. Your new motor is going to work just fine, and the new switch is going to work fine, just because it's clean and not filled with dirt, when all you had to do is blow the old one out and re-grease it, and you'll be good as new.
But if you really absolutely insist on buying a brand new switch and a brand new motor and a brand new latch and the whole shebang, the links are in the description below. Go ahead and make me billions. That's right, I'm talking billions, baby. Millions ain't enough. Make me billions by brand new stuff. Go ahead. Right now, come on.